ever been in a relationship that crosses cultural, racial, or even religious lines? It's fascinating, right? It turns out the very things that can make those relationships tricky can also be their greatest strength. A psychologist named Joel Krohn has developed a really powerful framework for this, and today we're going to break it all down.
So let's start with a question I think a lot of us can relate to, especially if our partner comes from a different background. Why do we keep having the same fight? You know the one. It's like you're stuck in a loop, whether it's about holidays or money or being on time. But what if those fights aren't, what they seem to be about? What if there's something way deeper going on?
To really get this, let's look at a classic example from Krohn's work. Meet Jamal and Elena. He's from a Black Baptist family down in Atlanta. She's from a Jewish family up in New York. They had this incredible connection, really saw eye to eye on the big stuff. But their first huge fight had nothing to do with their love for each other. Nope, it was about Thanksgiving. A total perfect storm of clashing family traditions. And that whole Thanksgiving dilemma with Jamal and Elena, it leads us right into our first big idea, the invisible battles. These are the fights that are really happening, just simmering right below the surface of our everyday arguments. Think of it like an iceberg. The thing you're arguing about, like whose family are we visiting, that's just the tiny little tip you can see above the water. The real issue, the massive invisible battle happening underneath, is a clash of your core beliefs, your meaning systems about what family loyalty even means. And it's the same for little things like being late. A fight about punctuality might not be about disrespect. It could be a collision between a monochronic culture, where time is a straight line and being on time is everything, and a polychronic one, where time is way more flexible and relationships matter more than the clock. Okay, so if we're all fighting these invisible battles, how in the world do you start to fix them? Well, you can't build a house together if you don't look at the blueprints you each brought to the construction site. And that brings us to our second step, mapping your differences. And to do this, Dr. Krohn gives us this amazing tool called the cultural inventory. You can think of it as a map of all your unwritten rules, all those ideas and expectations you soaked up from your family and your culture, probably without ever thinking about them. And this thing goes deep. We're not just talking about the obvious stuff like religion. It gets into your programming around family, like how decisions are made or what boundaries look like. It covers communication styles, your relationship with money, even food. The process is pretty simple, actually. You and your partner each take a look at your own cultural programming, and then you put your maps together to see where they line up, and maybe more importantly, where they really, really don't. All right, you've done the work. You've mapped out your differences. You can literally see where your cultural blueprints are clashing. So, now what? Well, this is where the fun starts. This is the really creative part. The goal isn't to figure out whose map is right. The goal is to build something totally new together. See, the endgame here isn't for one person to just give in and adopt the other's culture. That's not a win. The idea is to create what Krohn calls a third culture. This is your own unique, shared world that you build from the ground up. It honors both of your histories, but it's something that feels completely authentic to your new family. It's your own special blend. So how do you actually build it? Krohn gives us a practical 5-step process to turn those conflicts into something creative. First, when you're in an argument, you just pause and you ask, wait, is this a cultural thing? Second, you each get to explore the why, the stories from your past that shaped your point of view. Now, step 3 is absolutely essential. You have to validate each other's perspective. And that doesn't mean you agree, it just means you understand. Then you can move to step 4, which is creating third alternatives. Not my way or your way, but brainstorming a new our way. And finally, you try a solution out, and you agree to check back in and tweak it if you need to. Building this amazing third culture between the two of you is a massive win. But let's be real, it's only half the story, because no relationship lives in a bubble, right? You also have to protect what you've built from all the pressures from the outside. And that brings us to the challenge of navigating the outside world. Yeah, disapproval from family can be one of the toughest things to deal with. The absolute key is to be a united front. It can even help to prepare some answers together. So when an aunt says, "Oh, you're losing your culture," you can respond as a team. Actually, we feel like we're expanding our cultural understanding. It's such a powerful way to flip the script from loss to gain.
And this gets to something so important for just surviving all this. It's exhausting to feel like you always have to be a spokesperson for your culture or like you're some kind of walking diversity lesson. And Crohn's advice here is crystal clear. You don't have to be. You're a couple first. You get to decide how much you explain to the world. You have to protect your energy. It's vital.
So, why do all this? Why go through all this extra work? Because here's the thing. When couples figure out how to navigate these challenges, they don't just survive. They build something incredibly strong. They unlock these unique strengths, and they tap into a huge shift that's happening all around us. I mean, just look at the numbers. The Pew Research Center found that today, about 17% of new marriages in the U.S. are between people from different racial or ethnic backgrounds. This is not some small, niche thing anymore. It's a huge part of what modern America looks like. And to put that 17% into perspective, it is a five-fold increase since 1967. That was the year of the landmark Supreme Court case Loving versus Virginia, which finally made it illegal for states to ban interracial marriage. Think about that. What was once forbidden is now a really significant part of our society. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, it turns out that the very things that make these relationships challenging are also what make them so powerful. Having to talk everything through builds way deeper communication. Juggling two worlds makes you more flexible. And in the end, these couples aren't just creating a family, they're becoming cultural bridge builders. They're showing the rest of us how we can find unity even in our differences. And all of this brings us to what Crohn says is maybe the ultimate test for any relationship, but it's especially true for mixed match couples. You have to ask yourselves this question. Does our relationship, does all this work we're doing make each of us more of who we truly are, while also making us feel more connected to each other? Because in the end, the goal isn't to make your differences disappear. The goal is to learn how to dance with them. It's not about one person learning the other's moves. It's about the two of you creating a totally new, beautiful, sometimes complicated dance that is all your own.